Kia ora, my name's Kelly Dombrowski and I'm the lead researcher for the Ōtautahi Christchurch part of Urban Wellbeing project of building better homes, towns and cities. One of the things we were really interested in is not making decisions about urban places based on just what's legal, but based on enhancing wellbeing for everybody in the city. And one of the things we're really interested in is making cities places that people feel that they belong and that they're included in, and that includes a whole range of people. When we speak about urban wellness or urban well-being, we're thinking about a whole range of holistic factors of well-being, not just good health. We use Amanda Yates's Modi Order compass to think about well-being in the city as being about human well-being, cultural belonging, for example, access to good housing, access to greenways and blueways and waterways, and also accessibility, transport. So the project that we got M doing was to investigate inclusive places in Ōtautahi Christchurch, and they developed an amazing checklist of things that people can use to help enhance the wellbeing of all kinds of people in the city.
Kia ora. I'm M. I'm from the UK, but I lived in Ōtautahi Christchurch for most of my life, and I was the lead researcher for developing the accessibility tool. For me, what really stood out was our young people were being left behind. There were no low-cost options in the city. Our disabled friends and family were being left behind, not able to access public spaces, and anyone with young families was unable to access these environments, which just cut off a huge proportion of our people. So the plan for the research really came from talking to these impacted communities. It was working alongside them. It was listening to the struggles that they had. Places where the people that I talked to really thrived were places that worked for everyone. So where people in wheelchairs could come along, their friends and family who were a bit older could come along, where they could bring their children and they weren't pushed out by being unable to afford these spaces. We're here at the University of Canterbury, outside the Beatrice Tinsley building. It's where I sort of first encountered thinking about how all of our places don't always work for everyone. The University of Canterbury has wide open campuses, lots of places to sit. It also does so well at making sure that in many cases, disabled students and people who have additional needs are accommodated for. However, it also just shows us many cases where things could be improved upon. One of the examples that came out through the research was a student in a wheelchair who was just trying to reach their lecturer, but the signage was just not there for them to know where to go. And it just meant that they had to go out of their way to access a lift, which meant it was a really difficult journey for them just to have a conversation with their lecturer, a thing that we often take for granted at the university. So things like that can be fixed by just having that information, putting a sign up, saying where people are, making sure that information is up to date. And that is something that can often be done without having to change the building or what is in the built environment. So we're at the Dancer Mat in the centre of Ōtautahi Christchurch. It's a place where anyone can come along at any time, play music, dance, but also it's a space for people just to hang out. So lots of the positive feedback has been around young people, especially having somewhere where they feel like they're able to spend time. This isn't a reclaimed site, this is a temporary project, but something they've done recently is adding a ramp so that people are able to access the space, access the dance floor without having to go through a gravel car park. And of course that works for people in wheelchairs, but also people in prams, people with their shopping. It gives unhoused people a place to stop and rest and also enjoy the city as anyone else would.
The Dance Mat was a project that Gap Filler started after the earthquakes, when 70 to 80% of the central city was demolished because of buildings being damaged in the earthquakes, and there was no public spaces for people to go out and have fun. There's no nightclubs open, there wasn't any theatres, and the Dancer Mat was a way to bring some of that fun back into the city. People said, no one in New Zealand will dance outside, and they put it in and people used it for all kinds of things. People used it for dance practices. I've walked past before and there's been toddlers with their mums and dads having a boogie. King Charles, when he was Prince Charles, and Camilla have come and had a dance on there, so people have danced in public.
The Dancer Mat is a spot where graffiti artists, local people have been commissioned to make artwork for the space. And we know that artwork gives people a sense of identity, and that was something I heard from, again, especially young Maori and Pacifica people really wanting to see themselves represented, and art is a great way to do that, and it also supports local artists to do that. We're in Turanga Central Library, which is the post-earthquake rebuild of the Central Library, and it is open from early in the morning until late at night, and it's a space where everyone's able to come in and have a place for quiet, but also a place for play, so a place to sit down in the warmth, and that includes all of our young people, our children. There's a dedicated wing for children and young families. Unhoused people are able to come in, get a cup of coffee, but also there's all sorts of resources for lots of different people in a fully accessible building that also has gender-neutral bathrooms. The building is entirely step-free, the doors are automatic, and there are lifts throughout the buildings. You do not have to take stairs to go anywhere. There's accessible bathrooms on every floor, which means that no matter what your mobility needs or whatever additional needs you have, you can fully access the building. Information is available throughout the building. There's very clear signposts, and that information is also available online, so you can access that before you arrive. You know where you're going, and there's also staff throughout the building who are here to help. Naituahuri, the local hapu, were involved throughout the design of the building, and they had their stories represented along the outside of the building and through the facade. One of the aspects of the tool is getting designers and engineers to think about the multiple uses of spaces. Turanga Library is a great example of that. There's just lots of ways to engage with the library, so people can play, people can imagine, people can have fun, and people are able to engage with it as they want to. And that's really important for generating a sense of community. Here we are at Victoria Market Square, one of the sites where the accessibility tool was tested during its development. It's a great public space that people are able to spend time in, spend time next to the Ōtautahi River, and also is a great example of local mana whenua voices being integrated into design to create a more inclusive and welcoming environment. So we can see that the space has been designed to be mostly step-free, so people can move through it freely. You can move a pram, a wheelchair, or if you have additional mobility needs, you are fully catered for. We also see plenty of public seating around, which is very important to give people a place to rest and also allow people to use the space as they wish. Mana whenua are represented through this place with whāriki, po, and waka on the river, and this really gives it a sense of identity and connects it to the history and the people that have come before. Here at the Bridge of Remembrance, which was one of the places where the tool was tested and used for walking interviews, it's a place of remembrance, but it's also a good public space that is pedestrianised, has lots of seating for people to eat their lunch, and also feel connected to nature and the river. During the walking interviews with blind low vision people, while they appreciated the public space, they often found it difficult to navigate by the presence of vehicles and tram tracks. Behind me is an example of one of these shared spaces that makes it difficult for blind low vision people to orientate themselves within a space and feel safe moving around. They find this difficult due to the lack of curbs and the lack of paving stones that tell them where they are in relation to moving vehicles or traffic. Tram tracks can be difficult because not only is the presence of trams sometimes intimidating if you're not expecting them, but also the tram tracks themselves can prove difficult. Walking sticks can get stuck in them, blind low vision assisters can get stuck in them, and there can just be a change in the ground that people wouldn't be expecting. One of the ways that we can improve this space for blind low vision people is making sure that there's a clear separation of space and people away from vehicles.
Kia ora, I'm Rachel. I'm from Christchurch, NZ. Previously, I used to work at Life and Vacant Spaces and Gap Filler. I am a placemaking expert, so my role is working with communities to build connection to places and spaces. Christchurch was a bit of an epicentre after the earthquakes. There was a lot of destruction, so we worked quite closely with communities to reconnect them back to the city mostly. M was an intern for Christchurch NZ just as the urban development team was getting started. We worked with M a little bit to kind of, solidify some of these ideas and some of these techniques for how to kind of take a picture of a city and what is working and what's not working. When we move around the city, we tend to move around it in our space in the way that we've kind of always understood cities and our perceptions of things. So the tool really allows you to get into the minds of other people or to be a bit more attentive about how you're looking at things. So how does it work for elderly people? How does it work for disabled people? Are youth going to find this an exciting place to be? If you're from a different culture, will you find things to connect from this space?
I think what's really important for people in decision-making roles in city council or in government is to have research-based evidence for different kinds of tools for making decisions. So what we did was fund M's research into developing a checklist of different aspects that urban designers or just people building any kind of project or any kind of event in the city could use to check off, do we have the maximum number of inclusivity aspects that we could have in order to make this inclusive for as wide a range of people as possible? So what we hope to do is to create this checklist as an intervention that decision makers can use just to go through and see, how many of these can we tick off? Rather than what's the minimum number we can tick off, but how can we increase inclusivity as much as we can? I think we want urban spaces that are welcoming and inclusive for people from a range of different backgrounds with different mobility, different ability, disability, people from different languages, people from, with different neurodiversities. We want people to feel that they belong in Aotearoa New Zealand in our urban spaces.
Yeah, the goal of the tool is really to get designers and practitioners to understand how a place feels for a broad range of people, to create urban places that are more welcoming and work for everyone. If we did create an Ōtautahi Christchurch where people did feel welcome and did feel like they had a place of their own, not only would we see a wide range of economic and social benefits, we would also just see the strengthening of communities. And then that will create a more inclusive and welcoming Ōtautahi.